Hello and welcome to this first in a series of short webinars designed to guide you through the impending RTI or Real-Time Information Scheme being implemented by HMRC starting on the 6th of April of this year. This particular webinar will take us through the need to cleanse the data relating to your employee information predominantly prior to commencement of the scheme starting on the 6th of April. Now, in preparation for RTI, your software will be upgraded at some point during February. We'll be contacting you directly to arrange an appropriate time for that to happen. However, there is no need for you to wait until the software is upgraded before you commence on your data cleansing. And by data cleansing, we're referring to the requirement to validate and verify the key 8 fields of information relating to each of your employees. So fields such as the full official name. That should be their full name. It shouldn't be a known as, so an employee who is known as Bob, for example, should be stored with his full name as Robert. Double-barreled names are acceptable. Other characters such as hyphens and apostrophes are accepted. However, no other spaces or other invalid characters will be accepted within the data. The gender of the employee is important to be stored as well. We've got a field within EvolutionM to cater for that. Similarly, the date of birth. Now, the date of birth should not be made up. If you're unsure as to the date of birth of an employee, it should be left as it is currently. Similarly with national insurance number, that shouldn't be made up. You should be in possession of the national insurance number for your employees who are currently within EvolutionM. However, there will be an ability to leave that empty in a situation where you're unsure of that number, pending the provision of that number from HMRC. The established right to work in the UK is a field that's required for foreign nationals, where you need to store, for example, a passport number relating to the employee. The number of hours worked as well is as a banding, whether that's between 0 and 16, 16 and 30, 30 and above, or an other category, that would need to be recorded on your employees as well. And the country is another field that is required in a situation where that is anything other than the UK. So in terms of where those fields will appear within EvolutionM, here within employee details, employee maintenance, on the main tab, you can see we have individual fields pretty much as they are currently, although now more important than ever to validate that they are containing the right information. So we've got surname, forename, address. Nestling next to the postcode just to the right of there's a blank field which will be used to store the country in a situation where, as we said before, that's not the UK. The passport number towards the bottom, that is required to be stored if, as part of your normal checks to ensure the validity of an employee to work within the UK, you verify their passport. Where you've had sight of that document, then HMRC are asking that that passport number be recorded. It can also be recorded for UK-based employees, although that is by no means an essential requirement. The hours worked is a drop-down selection of 4 options. The default will be 30 hours or more, but as I said earlier, you have choices there of 0 to 16, 16 to 30, 30 or more as is being shown, and a category for other. Over on the right-hand side, there's the gender of the employee and the date of birth, and then as far as potentially the most crucial field is the national insurance number. So that's sitting on the tax tab, as you'll all be familiar with inside EvolutionM. Now, to assist you in validating the information, what you might consider doing is to construct yourself a grid view. I've given an example of one that I've created here. I've called it RTI and then included within the columns there the fields of data that are going to be relevant to this data cleansing activity. So just to remind you how that might be done, anything you need in terms of assistance in there, of course you can get that through our normal support lines. Whilst you are cleansing the data, and whilst this isn't part of the normal routine in terms of validating the fields we've already seen, just in getting ready for the first submission underneath the RTI scheme, inside the employee details on a new RTI tab, you'll see on screen in front of you, the employee indicators section is something that you can start to put in place ready for the scheme to commence. So if you are of a mind to go through your employee records currently, that's another area that you might choose to just have a look at whilst you're cleansing the individual details. Something else that you would need to do in terms of data cleansing, whilst not related specifically to employees individually, is the requirement to make sure that the value codes are set up correctly. Now, by value codes, we mean here the ones that are relevant to pensions and benefits. Now, the reason for this is that HMRC just need to know which of your, in this case, deductions is actually the one you're using for pension, because as you may have done, as I've done here, the deduction type is just set to deduction. It's not specifically saying it's a pension. So what HMRC are asking you to do is that you specifically indicate via the new field that's been highlighted there that this is a particular pension, whether it's pre or post-tax. And similarly on any other benefit type value codes, then they are required that you mark those as being a benefit. In addition to the employee details, you'd also probably want to take note of the employer information that is going to be required, because that will be sent with each of your submissions under the RTI scheme. And what we've done here is we've brought together these key fields of information into one area. So inside the payroll masters tax office maintenance, you'll see we've extended this screen to include largely the fields which are available elsewhere, but making sense to put them all in a particularly central place. So the accounts office reference and the UTR reference have been moved onto this screen so that they can be validated at this point. The business type is a new field. That's just a requirement to set that as either being self-assessment or corporation tax. And then for convenience purposes, we've chosen here to include a field to store your RTI sender ID, or the government gateway ID. By storing it at this point, every time a submission is required underneath the RTI scheme, it'll remember your ID and not trouble you to key it in each time. Moving on to the RTI menu, now bearing in mind we are still at the data cleansing stage here, so we're not suggesting that this is going to be an active participation in the RTI scheme, but what we've done as part of the first option there, the employee alignment submission, is we've allowed that to be accessible prior to the 6th of April, and a screen such as this will appear, which is basically validating the employee information for you. So it's telling you now, way ahead of the implementation of the scheme, the sort of fields where there are errors that need to be addressed before the scheme can be commenced. What you'll notice here is that this screen is a pre-validation only, so down at the bottom right the submit button is not activated. So that is available for you to just as a pre-validation. As soon as the software is loaded, then that will become available to be used. Thanks for listening to this very short webinar relating to the data cleansing. Look out for further webinars which will be recorded shortly, taking you through each of the individual steps involved in the RTI scheme. Thanks for listening.